Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
Welcome back to the Prime Life Podcast, where we explore ideas, innovations, and people shaping the future of longevity. If you're interested in the future of financial caregiving, longevity, innovation, and building solutions that truly meet people where they are, this is the episode you won't want to miss. Today, my guest is Chris Heye. He's the founder and CEO of Wealthcare Solutions, which he will tell you a little bit about. He's also a research fellow for LIMRA. Chris, welcome to the Prime Life Podcast. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what your company does.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be here. Yes, I'm the CEO of Wealthcare Solutions and Wealthcare Planning. And as you mentioned, I'm also a research fellow at LIMRA. And my company develops software products designed primarily for financial professionals and their clients. And the goal of the software products are to help both sides, the clients and the professionals, to make better decisions and have better conversations, especially around issues around longevity and around health care and other health-related risks, a little bit around finances, but it's primarily designed to look at sort of a lot of these sort of more qualitative, non-quantitative risks that consumers are increasingly facing. And it's in a way to help financial professionals have those conversations around those sort of non-market related risks that are increasingly becoming quite important to the financial and retirement security of many Americans.
I think that's a great recap. And I know that sometimes advisors and clients, as they work together, there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of maybe answers to questions or clarifying. So how can someone ensure that they won't outlive their money, and what type of annuity might help them with lifetime income if they were to ask their advisor that?
Yeah, so, people are, just to step back up for a minute, generation or two ago, our grandparents in most cases didn't have to worry too much about running out of money. I mean, my paternal grandfather died, I think I never met him, but I think he died when he was about 60. Grandparents, great-grandparents, they were very fortunate to live to 65. And that's really a big driver. It's kind of stating the obvious, but a big driver now is that retirement's different, right? I mean, hopefully I'll live 20 years, 30 years past the traditional, we all will live that long, past the traditional age of retirement. Hopefully my kids will be living till, hopefully by that time, 90 years old will be old hat. That raises, there's a lot of obviously great things about living longer. We all want to live longer, right? But, that means so we need to, after the traditional age of retirement, we need to be able to afford a lifestyle that we want for 20, maybe 30 years. And also there's a lot of uncertainty around that, right? So hopefully I'll live 25 years, but I've had two friends now die of ALS. One of them, I don't think, made it out of his 40s. One of them didn't make it out of his 60s. So things like that can happen. So you just never know. So one protection, the other piece of this is, well, there's actually two more pieces. One piece is retirement can be very expensive, right? Especially in the U.S. We have a small safety net in Social Security, but it's very expensive to live for a long time. Most of us are going to need, 3 years of long-term care. I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with the statistics on healthcare costs and long-term care costs. So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for most people, maybe millions of dollars that they're going to need to spend in order to live the life that they want. And then the other side of that is that it's not expensive, but it's really complicated. Just figuring all this stuff out. I mean, you've got Social Security, you got Medicare, you got private insurance. Some people are lucky enough to have pensions. So there's just basically tons of decisions now that people need to make later in life. And unfortunately, sometimes later in life, people aren't as good as making decisions because of cognitive decline or these other issues.
Right,
so
right.
it's a long way to say that annuities can address a lot of these problems, right? Annuities can lock in a certain income stream for you, so you don't have to worry about what am I going to sell this month, what am I going to do this month, how am I going to afford this. So I think there's different types of annuities for different situations, but for me at a high level, what they can do is they can help reduce these risks around decision making, because if you have annuities, you tend to have to make fewer decisions, at least fewer decisions about, what am I going to sell? What am I going to withdraw? And unfortunately, especially older adults who are having some cognitive or behavioral issues, anytime they basically log onto their Fidelity account or their Vanguard account or their bank account, every time they do that, it unfortunately presents an opportunity to make a bad mistake. And there is growing evidence about how older adults often make financial mistakes. And I also unfortunately have seen multiple examples of older adults who have been scammed.
Yeah. We talk about that on Prime Life here and there. The percentage of scams on seniors keeps going up for a whole bunch of different reasons. So I would definitely agree with you. I would like to know, Chris, what's the best way someone can potentially plan for healthcare or long-term care costs in their later years?
There's a few things. Like I said, it's hard because there's a lot of uncertainty. But you need to budget something like 70% of us will need at least 3 years of long-term care. And if you have dementia like my mother did, that's going to make things even more expensive. But I would suggest, on some of my software products, I have long-term care years estimators, cost in years, and there are other places you can check like Genworth, where you can check to see what average long-term care costs are in your area. So I think the first important thing, and then there's other sources like Fidelity and eBree that provide estimates of healthcare costs. So one thing you can do is try to, honestly and, accurately as you can estimate what some of your costs might be. And also some of those costs are going to be affected by your health. Again, if you have dementia like my mother did, she was in a memory unit for almost 4 years, and memory units tend to be almost twice as much as regular assisted living, or at least 50% more. Mm-hmm. So try to realistically estimate those costs. Try to realistically estimate what your spend rate is, what you anticipate your spend rate's going to be, and try to put together a little budget. So there's and financial professionals can really help in this area. So, I would say have a conversation an early meeting when you're in your 50s, maybe even for 60s at the latest. Start that process of putting those numbers together, estimating your spend rate, taking a look at your savings, estimate, and just absolutely you need a line item for healthcare costs. You need a line item for long-term care costs. Have those in there. But then there is this other piece. It's this kind of more qualitative preparation that I suggest people do. Part of that is getting the legal documents together. So make sure that you've got not a power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will, because not having those documents in place can really get you in trouble down the road. We had a power of attorney for my mother, and that was a godsend, because as soon as it became clear that she was having trouble making decisions, we got involved, and especially my sister was doing a lot of the financial management. So you need to prepare those legal documents. And then I'll just say one more thing. There's another really important piece should really strive to do is put together what I like to call like a financial wellness team. And especially if you're getting older, involve your kids, involve your friends, involve your spouse, and don't try to do all this on your own. Involve your financial professional. Again, it's really hard to do this stuff on your own. It's really easy to make mistakes, to get confused. So put a team together. There's safety in numbers. Get help. Don't be afraid to get help. This stuff's hard. No one's going to say it's easy. So you don't have to be embarrassed about asking for help from your financial professional, from your kids, from your spouse. What I really focus on in my work is how to protect people, how to keep people safe. right? Keep them financially safe, keep them physically safe. And one important component of all that is to build that team, with financial professionals, healthcare professionals, trusted family members, trusted friends, and, seek help, especially when making important financial decisions.
We've had many guests on Prime Life that have talked about exactly the things that you just shared about having a cross-generational team, people that you know and that you trust. And I think trust is a big factor here. When we talk about annuities, a lot of times we like to think of like, what are the basic financial essentials that you need to cover every month? So when you're looking at your financial portfolio, your assets, your balance sheet, like what is that number? And I think that also, but I would also say this, one size obviously doesn't fit all.
No.
And it also depends on someone's risk tolerance and different things like that. Chris, tell us a little bit about what your company does.
Sure. So again, it's a software company. We also do some training, and I can do a little consulting on the side as well. But so I've been developing products for financial professionals for several years now. And again, it's designed to help them more effectively identify and manage and mitigate these health and longevity related risks. Everybody's going to get sick. Percent or more people are going to need long-term care. Most of us are going to have at least some form of cognitive decline. So my goal has been, in part because my mother had dementia and I've had friends who got scammed, is to try to, again, to help people prepare for these risks and help people, keep them safe. So the latest products that I've developed.
Can you give us an example?
Well, sure. I mean, just for long-term care costs. And just let's say, you're an older adult and you're in your 60s and, your spouse develops a serious medical condition that, like they have cancer, they have heart disease or kidney disease, something that won't kill them, but something that may prevent them from continuing to work, something that may require them getting help with the activities of daily living, something that's going to require both a lot of attention and more money. And so, again, what we want to be able to do is help people prepare for those, or help, God forbid, someone gets a diagnosis of dementia. Someone gets a health diagnosis that forces you to move. Maybe it becomes unsafe to live at home. Maybe it's something that requires a caregiver to come into the house regularly. That can occur, and these tend to start happening by the time somebody reaches their 50s and 60s.
How does your software platform help advisors with understanding some of the things that you mentioned and perhaps compile some kind of plan for that individual that maybe would be a little different than other platforms and tools?
So my current products are essentially, it's kind of a platform. It's a knowledge platform, and the interface are these chatbots. So I have advisor-facing chatbots and client-facing chatbots. On the advisor side, the primary objective of these chatbots is to enable the advisors to have more successful conversations with their clients, especially around these health and longevity related risks. So it's kind of like a conversations coach or a communications coach. So if you're an advisor, you can open up the chatbot and you can type in, I'm meeting with a client today and there was a major health event in the family. I just found out about it. What are some of the things, how should I start the conversation? What are some good questions to ask? And I've even got like little sort of practice scenarios where you can pretend you're about to meet with a client and the chatbot says, okay, I'm the client and I say this, what do you say? And then there's just a bunch.
It's like a training. So it's like a training.
It's a little bit of it. I mean, it's training, it's educational, and it also enables you to define different client personas. So you can say, I'm working with a sandwich generation planner, or I'm working with a widow, or I'm working with a millennial, and you can configure the bot so you can say, well, from now on, when I ask you questions, assume that I'm talking about a millennial client, or assume I'm talking about a widow. So it can give you very tailored advice on how to talk to them, how to help them prepare, and then often there will be recommendations like, think about recommending protected income sources. It doesn't get down to the product level, but it'll say, you might want to think about annuities because this person sounds like a good candidate for that.
So you're using AI, I'm assuming?
Mm-hmm.
And what are your guardrails, whether it's on the advisor or the consumer side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one really important difference between using my platform and using something like Claude or ChatGPT is I have my own proprietary, curated, controlled database. So it's based on a lot of the work that I've been doing. I also have been doing working closely with some really fantastic psychiatrists in the Boston area, head of geriatric psychiatry at Mass General Hospital, another psychiatrist who's written 20 books. I've worked with financial planners. I've worked with healthcare professionals, doctors. And so I have this very rich database. So when either the advisor or the client queries that database, if it asks a question and it can't find the answer in the database, it just says, can't find it. So if you ask, who Michael Jordan is, it'll say, I don't know who Michael Jordan is. If you ask, how do I, fix the clog in my sink? Say, I don't know. It's because it's only looking in that database. And so I have this, rich content, and I've actually won multiple industry awards for my thought leadership in the content. And then what the firms that are using my application are doing is they're adding their content to mine. So in other words, if we did something, just making this, so if we work with NASA, you could say, okay, you could ask questions about, general about annuities, but you could say, what specific annuities does NASA provide? And then the result could come back and it'll say blah, 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 blah. And then here's a link. And then if you want to know more, contact Mary. So you could ask about, what do you do? And it'll come back and it'll tell you what NASA does. Or so you can have firm resources. So the nice thing from the firm perspective is it can sort of get its messaging out. You can kind of set it up so it's got its language. It takes you right back to the website if you wanted to do that. But it's always going to be referencing some combination of my content and the firm's proprietary content, and that's it.
That's interesting. Is there every so often that you test it to make sure that it hasn't hallucinated?
Well, I test it almost every day.
Yeah.
The good news is it's almost impossible for it to hallucinate because it looks in the database and there's just okay. So I've literally looked at like every word in the database. So it's highly curated. So it's, unless it would be really hard. Then if you're going to have any hallucinations, they'll be very minor. But because it's not going out and looking at some random website somewhere that may or may not have, accurate information, it's only looking in this database. So
no, it's very...
the part is not the finding information, the AI, out in the internet, because that's part of what ChatGPT and those could do. But it's also it's going in. So if I have ask a question, the bot, it goes in to my database. The AI part is like, oh, okay, here's the question. I've been looking at this. Where can I find the best answer? And it'll look in, a bunch of different rows in the spreadsheet, and then it'll take it and take that information and summarize it. So that's kind of the AI part that gets used. And then I also, most of the answers when you ask a chatbot, either if you're an advisor or a client, it'll give you what I call coaching tips. So, if you ask a question about you can ask it like, how do I help ensure that I don't run out of money in retirement? It'll say, some of the stuff we just talked about, put together the budget, try to figure out how long you're going to live, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll say, you got this. I know it's hard. Don't try to do everything at once. one step at a time, celebrate small victories, get help where you need it. Don't be afraid to ask, that kind of emotional, psychological support.
Right.
In addition,
has your research work at LIMRA helped with you putting together some of the frameworks that you have implemented into
sure. I mean,
platform?
I think you may know that the Alliance merged with LIMRA. So, and it's nice, and all the same people, all the same research fellows moved over. So in those years with the Alliance, I learned a lot about annuities. I mean, I wasn't really a specialist in protected income. So, but for sure, there's a lot of sort of the more technical aspects of annuities, and some of the reasons also for purchasing annuities. For example, there's some research that came out of LIMRA. It's by Michael Finke and David Blanchett. It's called License to Spend. I don't know if you've seen it. It's very interesting. It basically says that people are more willing to spend money if it's coming from their annuity than if it's coming directly out of their savings. I mean, an economist would say that doesn't make any sense, right? Money is money. But there is this feeling that, oh, it's just my annuity. I can spend that. I can go buy those, that nice pair of shoes, or I can go on that vacation because it's just coming out of my annuity. I don't have to sell anything. So
it's that guaranteed lifetime income or protective income. So Chris, as we get to the end of our conversation, if an individual or a company wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. There's not too many Chris Heyes. I think there's like one more, but I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. And I have a newsletter. I'd strongly recommend subscribing to my newsletter because I write about this stuff a lot. I'm also a regular columnist for the Journal of Financial Planning. So every few months, if you go to the Journal of Financial Planning, I'm in the sort of columnist section, and I write about this sort of intersection of health and wealth and longevity. Find me there. And finally, for more about the product, the most recent product, you want to go to wealthchat.ai. And wealth has got an extra H in there, so it's whealthchat.ai. If you go to my LinkedIn, it'll point you back there.
Yeah, we'll put everything in the show notes, so that's perfect. Last 30 seconds. Why do you wake up every day and do what you do? You could do lots of other things.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. I think there's some personal reasons for me. My mother had dementia. Her mother had dementia. Her sister had dementia. I've had two friends who were parents were scammed for millions of dollars, some combination of scam and really bad financial decisions. Mm-hmm. So I just see this every day, and I just feel like, not enough is being done to protect older adults and their finances. So, and there's so much you can do. I mean, I wake up every morning. It's not a problem of figuring out what to do. It's like, what tiny piece of this iceberg am I going to try to chip off today?
Yeah. Well, I love that. It's your passion, and we need more folks out there like you as well. And Chris, thanks so much. We'll have to have you come back again and talk a little bit more in depth. Our time went by really fast. We appreciate you joining me today on the Prime Life podcast. And for our listeners, check us out. Refer your friends, your family. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Until the next time, thanks so much, Chris, for joining me today.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me.